The pounding on my front door almost disappeared beneath the roar of the storm. But years in the military had trained me to notice the sounds that did not belong. Before I could reach the handle, a weak teenage voice cried through the rain, "Please, help me." Seconds later, police sirens echoed across the valley, growing louder with every passing moment. I pulled the frightened boy inside without asking questions, and just minutes later I opened my door again to face the last person I ever expected to see standing on my porch. The sheriff staring back at me through the pouring rain was my own son, and the warning he gave me that night changed everything I believed about my family. My name is Walter Brooks. I am 65 years old, and after spending nearly 2 decades as an Army Ranger, I thought I had already survived the hardest battles of my life. My wife, Linda, passed away 8 years earlier, leaving me alone on our quiet farm outside a small Tennessee town. My only son, Ethan, had become the county sheriff. He was respected by almost everyone, but somewhere along the way he had stopped being part of my life. Weeks earlier I had invited him to Thanksgiving, leaving him a voicemail that was never returned. I convinced myself he was simply busy with work, even though deep down I knew the silence between us had become much bigger than his schedule. That night my old German shepherd, Duke, suddenly froze in the middle of the kitchen. He did not bark or growl. Instead, he let out the quiet warning sound I had learned to trust over the years. Moments later someone slammed against my front door. When I opened it, a soaked teenage boy nearly collapsed into my arms. Blood ran down from a cut above his eyebrow. His clothes were covered in mud, and fear filled his eyes. After helping him inside, I cleaned his wound while he struggled to catch his breath. He introduced himself as Mason Carter. His father, Daniel Carter, was a respected lawyer in town. Earlier that evening, armed men had stormed his father's office. Before they reached him, Daniel had shoved a small hard drive into his son's hands and whispered only 2 words: "Run west." Mason escaped through a back exit and kept running until he found my farmhouse. Duke surprised me by calmly resting beside the frightened boy as though he had known him for years. I barely had time to think before headlights swept across my yard. Police vehicles stopped outside my house, their flashing lights cutting through the rain. I quickly hid Mason beneath the crawl space under my utility room, cleaned the muddy footprints from my floor, and answered the door. Standing there was Ethan, dressed in his sheriff uniform with 2 deputies behind him. He politely asked if I had seen a teenage suspect running through the area after an incident at a law office. I calmly said no and invited them inside. My heart pounded as I listened to heavy boots cross the floor directly above the terrified boy hiding underneath. After searching every room without finding anything, Ethan paused at the doorway before leaving. Without looking back, he quietly said that strange things happened in the countryside after dark and advised me not to involve myself in matters that did not concern me. The warmth had disappeared from his voice, leaving behind only a threat. Once they were gone, I helped Mason out of the crawl space. He looked at me with disbelief after learning the sheriff searching for him was actually my son. Together we unlocked the hard drive using the initials of his late mother. What we found made my stomach turn. Hidden inside were forged legal documents transferring ownership of my 43-acre farm using a fake power of attorney carrying my forged signature. According to the paperwork, I had been declared mentally incapable after a psychiatric evaluation that never happened. Mason explained that his father had uncovered the fraud months earlier while handling another legal case. Instead of exposing it immediately, Daniel quietly collected evidence until someone discovered what he was doing. That discovery had led to the violent attack on his office. The files revealed an even darker truth. My daughter-in-law, Rebecca, had secretly partnered with a powerful land development company that wanted my property for a massive commercial project. The forged documents would allow them to steal my farm without my knowledge. My son had somehow become part of the operation. I refused to believe it at first, but every file, every signature, and every financial record pointed in the same direction. After staring at the evidence for several minutes, I unfolded an old phone number I had carried in my wallet since my military days and called the FBI. Special Agent Victoria Hayes answered. As I explained everything, she quietly admitted the company had already been under federal investigation for more than a year. The missing piece had always been someone on the inside connecting local officials to the scheme. When I finally admitted that the sheriff involved was my own son, the silence on the other end lasted several long seconds. The following morning, I watched from across the street as Ethan met privately with the county medical examiner outside Danielle's law office. He handed over a folder, spoke quietly, and waited until the doctor reluctantly signed paperwork. Then Ethan instructed one of his deputies to approach Mason with extreme caution if he was found. I knew exactly what those words meant. They were not planning an arrest. They wanted the only witness permanently silenced. I hid Mason with my elderly neighbor, Grace, one of the few people I still trusted completely. As soon as she heard what was happening, tears filled her eyes. She confessed that 2 years earlier Ethan had pressured her into giving away part of her property by threatening to reopen an old criminal investigation involving her son. She had stayed silent because she feared making things worse for everyone around her. Listening to her confession hurt almost as much as discovering the truth about my own family. That evening, an anonymous text warned me they were coming after midnight for both Mason and the hard drive. When I called the number, Deputy Ryan Mitchell answered in a trembling voice. He admitted hearing Ethan order officers to treat Mason with extreme caution on the night of the attack. The guilt had become too heavy to carry. He confirmed Rebecca was directing the entire operation and begged for a chance to do the right thing. I immediately connected him with Agent Hayes before helping the FBI prepare a trap inside my farmhouse. Just after midnight, I called Ethan and pretended I had found a strange hard drive hidden in my desk. I casually mentioned Danielle's name and asked if he could stop by to help me figure it out. Less than an hour later, Ethan arrived with Rebecca. She skipped every friendly greeting and immediately demanded to know where Mason was hiding. Duke stepped between us, growling low enough to make everyone in the room freeze. I looked directly at my son and told him I had discovered everything. Before Ethan could answer, Rebecca calmly admitted she had spent more than 3 years planning the entire operation. She explained that my farm was the final piece needed for a multi-million-dollar land deal. She also admitted paying off Ethan's massive debts before they married, knowing financial desperation would make him easier to control. Those words shattered whatever confidence Ethan still had. He realized he had been manipulated from the very beginning. Before anyone could move, every light inside the farmhouse suddenly switched on as FBI agents rushed through every entrance. Agent Hayes stepped forward with her badge raised while agents surrounded Rebecca. Hidden recording devices had captured every confession. Rebecca was arrested immediately, and Ethan followed moments later on charges of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and elder financial abuse. As officers escorted him outside, he reached one trembling hand toward me. I could not bring myself to take it. Instead, I rested my hand on Duke's head and watched my son disappear into the darkness. The investigation uncovered everything. Daniel Carter had survived the attack after the medical examiner secretly arranged emergency treatment under a false identity. Days later, Mason was reunited with his father in a hospital room, and watching them embrace reminded me that hope sometimes survives even the darkest nights. 3 months later, both Rebecca and Ethan were convicted in federal court. Rebecca received more than a decade in prison for leading the fraud, while Ethan received a reduced sentence after eventually cooperating with investigators. The judge reminded him that wearing a badge never placed anyone above the law. Life slowly returned to normal after the trial. Friends who had stayed silent found the courage to speak again. Neighbors helped repair fences damaged during months of fear, and Daniel thanked me for saving his son's life. One cool spring morning, Mason arrived at my farm wearing work gloves, ready to help repair the front gate. As we worked beneath the rising sun, he smiled and repeated something his father always believed: justice may take time, but it never forgets. I looked across the fields that my wife and I had spent a lifetime building and realized the greatest danger had never come from strangers. It came from the people who already knew exactly where my trust lived and chose to betray it anyway. From that day forward, I promised myself that protecting the people you love sometimes means asking difficult questions before it is too late.